And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic here for Saturday morning, showing a band of IFR across the Bering Sea, Pribilof Islands down into the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, and sliding into Kodiak Island. Areas of VFR with some areas of marginal VFR for the interior, back to IFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and marginal VFR for the southeast coast. And then for Saturday afternoon, we've got some areas of marginal VFR here over the southeast interior of the state, with a band of IFR now lifting northward here into the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay area, and then extending southeastward there into the Northeast Pacific with marginal VFR for the Panhandle, IFR for the North Slope out to the Arctic coast, IFR over the southeast Bering Sea here, and IFR pushing into the western Aleutians to about Adak with marginal VFR to Atka Island. Then for Sunday morning, next system here pushing a band of IFR eastward into Nikolsky, Unimak Island, back out toward Adak, and then wrapping back in around the low there to the western Aleutians. Marginal VFR across the remainder of the Bering Sea into the southwest coast. Good VFR in the interior, IFR here from the North Slope out to the Arctic Ocean, and a band of IFR right along the coast of the Panhandle, but mostly to the south of the North Gulf Coast. And for the afternoon Sunday, good VFR here for the interior of the state from Fognak Island right up across the Kenai Peninsula, just about all the interior there. And then north of the Brooks Range, IFR to the Arctic coast. And marginal VFR here for the eastern North Gulf Coast down across the Panhandle. Out to the west, still with a system out here, a band of IFR there. St. Matthew Island down to the Pribilofs, extending to the at least the north shore of the Alaska Peninsula, and then back to Adak and Atka. Passes, Anatuvik and Adigan. Look good tomorrow. VFR flying for both passes throughout the entire day. Lake Clark and Merrow could start out marginal but become VFR as the day wears on. Rainy, VFR the entire day, looking good for windy as well, and the eastern Alaska range should be wide open. Isabel VFR and Mentasta VFR as well. Could be some marginal VFR there on the northern entrance there for Mentasta Pass. And Tanita, though, good VFR. Even Portage has VFR forecast for the first day of the weekend. And Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels here, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet there over the southeast coast. And also over the south central Bering Sea and the central Aleutians, same thing, 2,000 to 4,000 feet there, with the surface right into Shelikof Strait, just off the North Gulf Coast tomorrow morning, and then up toward St. Matthew Island. Icing with a band of moisture here pushing into the Panhandle. Could be some areas of considerable moderate rime icing, mostly over the central areas, maybe up around Yakutat, with lighter icing amounts into Prince William Sound, and then down south across Dixon Entrance. And then with a system out here to the west over the Bering Sea, pushing a band of moisture with areas of considerable moderate rime icing there along in advance of the front there, here nearing the Pribilof Islands and pushing across the east central Aleutians. And for the jet stream, we've got south to north flow here at about 80 knots, taking a westerly turn, and then northwest at 70 knots along the southwest coast and the Alaska Peninsula. Lighter winds here over the eastern and northern interior. And this jet diving southward returns back here at about 110 knots, cutting in to British Columbia, just clipping the southern panhandle. And for 9,000 feet here, low pressure west of the southeast coast, they're giving southwest winds at about 35 knots there across much of the southeast coast into western Canada. Pretty good east to northeast winds up here along the Arctic coast there, anywhere from 50 to 35 knots. And then southerlies, broad area of south-southwest wind flow here where that next system pushes into the western Bering Sea there. We've got 60 to 75 knot winds in advance of the front coming right across Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, and those areas, pushing up toward the Pribilof Islands. 9,000 or 3,000 feet here, low pressure north of Shimianatu, and then in advance of the front, strongest winds here, 60 knots, but even stronger up to the north here, up to 65 knots. falling back to pretty light conditions here across the central and southern interior. Narrow band of east-northeasterlies about 35 knots through there. And then the central western Arctic coast and north slope looking at some good easterlies at 40 to 45 knots blowing across the Chukchi Sea. Southerlies about 35 knots there just off the central coast of the Panhandle. And for turbulence, look for some considerable moderate turbulence here for the western Brooks Range out to Cape Lisburne and maybe Point Ley. Otherwise, mechanical moderate turbulence here for Kamishak Bay into the Barren Islands. And from the western Alaska Peninsula all the way out to Shimianatu, expect pretty bumpy conditions in that area